Hi, it's Paul here. We recorded this week's show just a few hours before we heard the sad news of Niki Lauda's passing. Niki, of course, was an absolute legend in Formula One and various other forms of motorsport as well, winning 3 World Drivers' Championships, battling back from life-threatening injuries to carry on his racing career, and to younger fans he'll be remembered as the non-executive chairman of Mercedes who worked along with Toto Wolff to make the team what they are. All of us on the Three Legs Four Wheels team would like to pass on our condolences to Niki Lauda's family, and we all think that he will be sorely missed in the paddock and by the F1 world in general. Now here's this week's show. Hi and welcome to this week's Three Legs Four Wheels F1 podcast. It's Paul here with
Dan,
Chris, Lee.
You nearly forgot then, didn't you?
We're in a different order on the table to how we used to be a long time ago, and yeah, it's late.
It's only late because we're recording in several sections tonight. I think we'll start off with the first pre-recorded bit.
Yeah.
We have a guest this week.
Yes, we do.
And it's time for a jump cut. And we are here with our regular technical guest, Craig Scarborough. Welcome along, Craig.
Hi guys, how you all doing?
Very well.
Very
how
good,
are you?
Thanks, Craig. Pretty good. How's things with you?
Well, everything's rosy in my garden. To be honest, it's all good. I'm enjoying the season. I'm enjoying the clement weather that we're having in England at the moment, and we've got some interesting races coming up. So it was good.
Definitely. I guess we're at the start of the upgrade season now, with F1 hitting Europe and the Barcelona test going on last week. Any sort of early feelings on teams that have got things right?
Well, that's it's pretty tricky actually at the moment. To be honest, I mean, I was really looking forward to Spain because, as you say, it is like the start of the big upgrades, and there really weren't the level of upgrades that I was expecting. Bearing in mind we've had the regulation change this year, I thought everyone would come on with a really big step, but there was probably only McLaren, Haas. I mean, there were probably only 2 big updates that we saw. Everyone else had just had bits and pieces. So it's tricky, isn't it? Because this year, I think, as much as we've had the regulation change, which has been a big impact for the team on the aero side, I think the bigger impact is actually these new tyres. With the common construction, the change in compounds, and obviously the thinner tread. And I think everybody is at a slightly different stage with them in trying to understand what the hell's going on. And, there's a few winners out there. I think Mercedes very much are the winners out there. And, they've never necessarily been the team with the greatest of tyre management, but they seem to have kind of hit the sweet spot with the tyres more so than anybody else. And I think Ferrari, obviously, clearly one of the losers in that, as are Haas, who are really kind of struggling. And then amongst all of that, you've kind of got McLaren that have kind of sneaked through from nowhere to looking maybe not quite best of the rest, but certainly a very consistent sort of front runner in the midfield. So it has all kind of changed about this year, hasn't it?
Yeah, very, very much so. One thing that I wanted to ask early is the problems that Ferrari have been having that have made them bring the new upgraded engine in two races early. Are they really that far down on power that they're now panicking?
Yeah, that was a very strange sort of tactic from Ferrari, because obviously, each engine's got to do about 7 races, and we're not that level into the championship. That engine would due to have arrived for Canada, which is clearly one of the first big horsepower circuit on the calendar. So why Ferrari, for all of the problems that they have at the moment, chose to introduce a new? It was just the V6 engine. It was none of the other parts around it. Allied with some shell fuels and lubricants to give them a bit of power boost, just seemed a bit odd. And we know Ferrari have got plenty of power because they've still got the highest top speed, but seem to be able to run quite a bit of downforce in comparison to everyone else. I mean, we saw that particularly at Baku, wasn't it? They had one of the biggest rear wings, but still they were the quickest out there. So I don't think Ferrari's problem is horsepower. Ferrari's problems lay very much with the tyres and how the car uses them. And I don't think horsepower is going to solve that problem. I mean, let's be honest, it's never a bad thing. If you can have more power, you would take it. But it's a strange way for Ferrari to use their resources to bring an engine on 2 races early, which is quite a big step. That's effectively almost a month of development that has been cut short on that version of the engine. It's a little bit strange, and I don't really have an answer to why Ferrari thought that the PU was the most important thing over chassis and aero.
Do you think they'll be using the new engine at Monaco, or will they stick with the older one that's got less power because the power matters less there?
I mean, it sounds like the common sense thing is they would put the old engine back in. I think they said it had an increase in horsepower, and obviously you can't really judge that very well, despite all of the guys from Italy in the magazines and on Twitter saying exactly how much power it had extra, which are normally figures just plucked out of the air. So yes, it would make sense to put the other power unit back in for Monaco and save the mileage on the big power one for Canada. And some of the summer races. Obviously, we go to Austria, I think, straight after, if I can remember the calendar, and Silverstone's not far behind as well. So you've got lots of, very power-sensitive circuits coming up. And, that second engine needs to run at all of those races. So unless they want to take penalties later in the year, they're going to have to get some more mileage out of the original engine that was obviously installed at Melbourne as running up until the Spanish Grand Prix.
Do you think Ferrari might be doing the old Ferrari thing of they've got problems, so you just try and throw more horsepower at the car?
I don't think so. I'm a bit confused with where Ferrari are at in terms of strategy. I mean, I've got quite a lot of respect for Matteo Binotto, their now team principal, who was their technical director, and he doesn't strike me as a typically Ferrari Italian kind of bad reactions. But equally, you don't feel that he's it's almost like he hasn't got a grasp of the situation. I know obviously what you say to the press is very different to what you're thinking in your head or you're talking to your team, but we haven't had this feeling, it was quite clear. We probably had inklings at testing, but certainly after Melbourne, I think everyone kind of knew where Ferrari's strengths and weaknesses were, and they haven't really done a lot to rectify them. So I'm a little bit of a loss to understand what their tactics are, whether they are truly sticking their head in the sand or, they've just got a bit of a PR spin going on at the moment and saying, well, we've got a new engine, or we've got to go away and work out, what we need to do to this car. But 5 races in, they really, everyone else was kind of on the case. I failed to believe that Ferrari are, in the dark and don't understand what's going on. So it could just be the PR limitations, which you have to say is something that Binotto isn't great at. I think he's probably would naturally be a little bit too honest and feels that he's better saying nothing than actually offering his genuine opinion. At races when clearly these first 5 races have been an absolute disaster for Ferrari in terms of getting the results in.
Do you think Ferrari would have been in a better place now if they'd have kept Kimi for another year, just to take this whole driver issue they've got out, because they'd just be concentrating on Sebastian like they usually would do, which would give them more time to try and work out what's going on with the car, but they just seem to spend races constantly trying to work out how to keep a car in between their 2 drivers.
So would Ferrari be quicker if they had a slower driver?
Yeah.
It's very hard to say. I mean, would Kimi have liked this year's car? It's very balanced, which obviously makes it much easier to drive. So he probably would have been quite comfortable in the car this year. And I think the only benefit would be, as you say, he's sort of quite happy to roll over and take the instructions from Ferrari, whatever they may be. But yeah, again, their race tactics. I mean, it's difficult. I mean, I think a lot of people are pointing, finger at Ferrari quite hard, and I don't know if that's necessarily fair because if you've got one driver that's catching up with another driver, but unable to pass with DRS. But it suggests then that the only reason they're able to actually keep up with the car in front is because of DRS along the straight, allowing them just to kind of just close up that little bit and then probably losing a bit of time around the back of the circuit. So, I think Ferrari are getting a bit of a bad rap. And I think there is also at the moment a little bit of, everything must be done for Leclerc. I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but I think a lot of people think that perhaps even Vettel should be, should be rolling over more than Leclerc was, because let's face it, Leclerc has a few times refused to move over for Vettel and vice versa. So it's a really difficult situation there, isn't it? I don't think just because someone's closed up a little bit in a race, it's reason necessarily to swap positions. The Ferrari obviously got a lot more data than we have, but I think what we have found is that when that situation has come up, they've just left it that little bit too long to make a decision. And then thereafter, one of the drivers, invariably Leclerc in these last few races, has been given a strategy that was, never going to work well for him. And invariably one of them loses out to a Red Bull through the race. So Ferrari aren't very snappy in that. But equally, I think there's probably a little bit too much criticism of Ferrari feeling that they have to forever let Leclerc through whenever he needs to during the race. But to be honest, they should be on pole position and leading the races. There shouldn't be any question about, where Ferrari are, just to kind of hopefully try and pick up a podium at a race. I mean, it's ridiculous. They really should be so much further up the road.
I mean, they've had a chance for a win in Bahrain if it hadn't been for the control electronics failing.
Exactly. Yes.
So it's bizarrely as it sounds with Mercedes, even though they've had 5 1-2 finishes, they haven't earned all 5 of them.
That's absolutely the case, and we've had a lot of odd situations through some of these races as well. So. I mean, I think Ferrari should have had at least one win in the bag, as you say. But I think I think they should be a lot more competitive than they are, because the car is kind of almost there. It clearly worked very, very well in qualifying early in the year. It worked very well in the heat of Bahrain, but they just can't seem to be able to switch that on at other circuits. And, again, if you ask 100 people, you'll get 100 different responses as to what the problem is, depending on how technical they are. And I think to try and pinpoint where Ferrari's issues are, it's very easy to point at something that looks different. But I think fundamentally it's getting these tyres to work, and particularly in the race. And Ferrari aren't alone in struggling with those this year.
Yeah, what is the main difference with the tyres this year? Is it a higher operating temperature that they need, or
there's a few changes. First of all, you have the thin gauge, which basically means the tyres are already half worn out in terms of tread depth than they were last year. And what that means is if you can imagine the strip of rubber that forms the tread, that moves. Almost like when you're rubbing a pencil rubber over a piece of paper, actually squidges, and that squidge of the tread block actually creates heat in the tyre. So when you've got less tread block to squidge around, the tyre naturally creates less heat itself, which means the tyres are quite tricky to get into the right operating range. Also this year, they've made the change where the rear tyre warmers have had their temperature turned down by 20 degrees. So already out of the box, the rear tyres aren't up to the right working temperature very quickly. And a lot of teams have struggled to be able to get the heat into the tyres without too much sliding. And what you found with teams like Williams and Haas, where the tyre temperature literally just goes straight through the working range and straight out to the hot end of the range. And that does as bad a job of getting the tyre to work as running them too cold. So everyone's sort of struggling. But what's unusual with the tyres this year is normally if someone's good in qualifying and bad in the race, it's because they're working the tyre too hard. But what you're actually finding is that the opposite situation's happening with lots of teams where, they're bad in qualifying and bad in the race, and it's like, oh, that doesn't make sense, really. Surely it should be the other way round. Haas in particular have had these issues, and I think maybe one of the reasons we've not seen these big kind of B specification updates is that everyone's still just trying to tweak their baseline setup to get these damn tyres to work for them. So I think it may be a bit later in the year before we start to see the big aero changes, because obviously if you change too much too quickly, you just lose where you are completely. So, these tyres are tricky, and, I've yet to meet an engineer at a team that really likes Pirelli tyres, because they're just so difficult to work with in comparison to, previous tyre suppliers to Formula One and other categories.
Is that a good thing, really, because it gives the teams more to work on, and it's not just a case of stick the tyres on and we know what they're going to do. And I think in some ways I quite like the unpredictability of that.
I think again, this therein lies one of the big questions of Formula One is like, what do you want the performance to be about? Do you want it to be a category where people are trying to get tyres to work, and race pace is largely dictated by how the tyres are going to work out? And if you see, particularly at the top three teams, their race pace is really, really similar, and by the end of the race, they're all just within a few seconds of each other. And that's not because the cars are all really equal in base performance. It's because the tyres can only go so fast for a race, and you haven't really got much to do with strategy. So, I think the unpredictability can be interesting, but equally, I think it can kind of detract from the show. I'm not sure if that's what people want in Formula One, if it is the, faffing about with the tyres to kind of cover up other issues with the show that the formula produces.
I think in an ideal world, if the cars were like bunched up enough where they could race each other and they could get close to each other without cooking their tyres, you just want tyres that lasted the whole race, wouldn't you? You could take that away then.
I think the strategy aspect of tyre changes is quite interesting, and I think it does truly add to the show. So I think if you could have a tyre that you could absolutely hammer for a third of the race, or maybe go easy with them and they'd last half of the race, without, as you say, the overheating and all the weird stuff that goes on with Pirellis, then I think we would end up with quite a racy formula with assuming that the aero was, because then some people would 2-stop, some would 3-stop. You can have like the Perez style kind of coast to through the race and get it done that way, or the sort of the Schumacher flat out, just give me more tyres and I'll go flat out again, sort of that approach. I think that variability is, I think, what we want in the formula, but not the suddenly we found that everyone's finding that even the medium's going off really quickly, and so we'll all have to just cruise around for most of the race and not really get any racing done.
That was the other thing I was going to ask about tyres. I don't know if this is my imagination or not, but God, pardon me. Are the tyres actually shedding more rubber this season? Because it looks like the marbles coming off the tyres are a lot bigger than they have been previously. I don't know if anybody else has noticed that.
I haven't noticed it. And thinking about what they've done with the tread, I'd be surprised if that was the case. But yeah, maybe you're right. Again, I've not really looked at it very closely. I've not really heard anyone else commenting about it. So yeah, I think the jury's out on that one for me.
I'll keep an eye out on that on the next couple of races. The great Mercedes rear wing debate with the serrated edge. What did that do for them? Because everyone seemed to be a little bit confused when they launched that.
Yeah, it was a bit of a sort of a flying visit, wasn't it? It's all sort of known sort of technology. We've seen it racing in the past, and what happens is, as air flows under the rear wing, it goes from being nice and smooth. You get nice layers of airflow going neatly under the wing, and that's called laminar flow. And then at some point, as the air pressure drops behind the wing, as the wing kind of sweeps up, the airflow starts to separate, and it can either separate fully, which is like really bad for performance. That's when the wing stalls. That's like what people were doing with the F duct and with some of the clever rear wings they had a few years ago.
Was that Williams' problem last year?
exactly. But there does come a point where the airflow stops being laminar and actually becomes turbulent, and what they call the transition point. And that, I mean, the airflow still works, even though rather than it being laminar, it's a little bit more turbulent against the wing surface. But the point at which that change happens can be a little bit variable and not necessarily predictable, especially when you've got DRS opening and closing the rear flap. So if you've got all these little edges, all these little serrations, what that does is it forces it to go from laminar to turbulent in a more predictable way, so that when DRS closes or when the wing is moving about around the circuit and the airflow perhaps isn't absolutely ideal, you get slightly more consistent rear wing performance. Most people don't really bother with it, and Mercedes have played with it a lot over the past 4 or 5 years. I've seen it sort of come and go in various forms. So again, maybe that was just something they were suffering with at a couple of tracks, thought that would help them. I mean, again, I wouldn't be surprised to see it again a bit later in the year if they are having some stability issues with the car. But again, it's just one of those little kind of aero tweaks that teams kind of pull out of the bag occasionally, just to just give them a little bit more performance.
Just for a little tweak, it just seemed very, very noticeable, because I mean, a lot of the times when teams have made a small adjustment, you can't really see it just from a sort of casual look, but that was one of the most blatant ones that I've seen in quite a long time.
If you can imagine the amount of work it must be to mould a rear wing edge with those little serrations on, because they're not cutting, they're moulded in. It's like the carbon shop must be rolling their eyes when the designer comes down with the drawing. It's like, guess what we're going to do? You're not planning on going home early any point this week, are you? It's I call it, I suppose it's a little bit unfair to call it a little tweak. Obviously, it's a big job for them, but the performance resulting from that isn't necessarily a huge amount. But as you say, a lot of the changes, when I speak to some of the engineers and they say, oh yeah, we've got all these new parts, but unless you can overlay the CAD from one to the other, or the guys point it out to you, with the naked eye, you can't see half these changes. So even though the Mercedes wing is, a big piece of work and has a small effect, some of these very subtle geometry changes that we never see still need entirely new rear wing molds made for the parts. And that's like no less hard work for the manufacturing side of the teams to keep up with the demands from the aero departments.
A lot's been made in the mainstream media about the small changes that Mercedes made to their front wing and barge boards for Barcelona. I think it was Sky said that it was worth roughly 0.4 of a second. That seems an awful lot from a little tweak to the barge boards. What exactly did they do around that area in order to give themselves that much performance? Because when you look at the qualifying times, it seemed to be roughly about 4/10.
That sounds you're right. It sounds a hell of a lot of performance. Mercedes made quite a few little changes to the car, but it's what James Allison describes as aero porn. It's like these little visual changes that doesn't make a big difference, but of course we'll get very excited when we see them. So the key change was on the front wing, and Mercedes have actually copied a Red Bull, or an idea that Red Bull have already come up with. I don't know if they copied it, but it's certainly Red Bull were first out of the bag with it. And the regulation change for this year says that if you slice the front wing along its centre line, at any point you can only have 5 wing elements. But in that first bit of the wing, when it goes from the very flat middle section, then it starts to arch up, which is what we call the Y250 area, which is this big key airflow that goes down the car. You want that to be the wing to be really aggressive there, and you want lots of edges to kind of get this vortex spinning really powerfully back through the car. But with only 5 elements, you're restricted. So what they've done is they've actually shortened the rearmost piece of wing, the rearmost flap, a little bit shorter. And then the one in front of it, they've cut a little extra notch into it. So still when you slice it through, because of the extra notch, you get that 5 elements, because there's not the rearmost piece overlapping. But when you then cut across the next bit, when that notch finishes and the rearmost flap starts again, you've got 5 elements. But when you actually look at the wing, you can count 6 elements flicking the airflow up. So it's a very clever little idea to beat the regulations. Completely legal. It's just one of those little odd geometry things that teams work out. So that would be quite influential because they're getting a slightly stronger Y250 effect. Back through the barge boards, the changes were much more subtle. I think they just they changed the angle of one of the little sort of the boomerang wings that kind of stick out of the barge boards, and added a little extra element below one of them. So I think there was 2, and then ended up being 3, if I can remember off the top of my head now. That would have been perhaps less influential. It's just, moving in the flows into exactly the right place that they need them. And yeah, I mean, I think 0.4 sounds a lot from that level of change, and I didn't see much else necessarily change on the Mercedes in Spain, which was something of a surprise because they tend to bring a really big upgrade to the Spanish Grand Prix each year, which tends to stick to the car for the rest of the year. Yeah, I mean, I guess you could say that that would have improved it, but equally, I think everyone else was bringing a few tenths to their car with their parts anyway. So, again, I think people are getting a little bit excited and jumping back on the Mercedes bandwagon and saying, how great everything they do is. When, if we remember back in testing, so many people were, very much off the wagon with Mercedes and saying that they've got everything wrong and they need to redesign their car. And their whole philosophy. So you've got to be a little bit wary of some of those comments. But Mercedes have proven it's past 2014, was that 5 years now? Crikey, have been very good with their in-season development. They're very good at engineering the car to get it to do what they want, and even when they start the car with when the car's not quite where they want it to be, or if during mid-season they start to come up with problems, they're very quick to engineer those issues out. So they really are sort of fantastic in that regard. The team has its weaknesses. Every team has its weaknesses, but I think that's something that they've worked quite well on. If they have got a problem, they're really quick to sort it out. I think Ferrari have proven to be quite the opposite. Whatever they come with out of the blocks tends to fade through the season rather than developing strongly. And again, if we look at the Ferrari at Spain, their updates were very minimal. I mean, I seem to remember it was just a little aspect to the front wing, which again is influential, but isn't certainly part of any major upgrade package that we would have expected for them to bring, particularly bearing in mind the performance of where their car is at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, are we going to see at any point soon a sizable Ferrari Aero upgrade, or are they just going to? Is it just going to be little tweaks until they realise that it's too late and then chuck everything in the wrong direction? Well, a bit like Vettel's strategy for getting off the line.
Exactly. I mean, I think that's one of the kind of the critical questions of Ferrari at the moment. I think, again, a lot of people are pointing at like this very different front wing and going, well, that's clearly the problem. And I don't believe it is. But having said that, I think Ferrari do need to do some stuff with the front suspension, with the front aero as well, because the front end of that car just isn't working. I mean, it was evident through Sector 3 in testing. It was abundantly evident by the time we got to Melbourne, and we actually got some data back from the FIA on corner performance, and it's like, oh crikey, Ferrari are really struggling slow and medium speed corners, and that means it's a mix of kind of mechanical grip and it's a mix of aero grip as well. So it's not just a simple change, but Ferrari have got a big piece of work to do to work out exactly what they need to change. It's not just about changing it.
So they could be in a bit of trouble. Oh, they could be in a bit of trouble come Monaco then.
Sorry, I missed that. Say again.
So, they could be in a bit of trouble come Monaco then, I'd have thought.
Monaco is looking absolutely desperate for. I mean, to be honest, there's a circuit where Ferrari are going to go very well at, because Monaco is all slow speed corners. We then go to Canada, which is high speed, which starts to play to Ferrari's strengths, but obviously it's got lots of very low speed corners. It's very difficult with the tyres, and it's very cold typically in Canada. So if Canada doesn't look great, then we go to Austria, and again, they've not been very good in the high-speed corners. Only really on the very, very fast corners where you're not you're not traction limited at all. So you think, well, hold on, what circuit would suit Ferrari? Probably Indianapolis. I mean, might be the only one I can think of. And Yeah, and as you know, that's quite difficult for any Formula One team, as it's been sadly demonstrated this week. So yes, I mean Ferrari really are in quite dire straits, and they haven't got that kind of joker where they think, well, at least we can get a great result here, because I don't think that's necessarily the case. So that they've really got to find the right sort of fix, and that's going to be difficult for them. And the championship's marching on, and you've seen how Mercedes have been in years past when they get a bit of competition. They're very, as I say, they're very quick to respond, and Ferrari are going to have to not just catch Mercedes, but they're going to have to overtake them for a big chunk of the mid-season. So if they're not winning in Austria and Germany and Silverstone, then really the championship is almost definitely lost to them. They have to go and scratch their heads and decide what they need to do for 2020.
Sacrifice another team principle, that kind of thing.
Well, again, this is the problem. I mean, I heard, you hear the sort of the people calling for Binotto's head after the Spanish Grand Prix, and it's like, I think maybe the guy needs to go back to being the technical director and not trying to run the whole show. I think that would be the better thing than just sacking him, because I think if they sacked him, they're kind of running out of heads at that team now, because you've got Laura Meekes. If that's how you pronounce his name, I'm never quite sure how you pronounce his surname. Obviously, fresh from the FIA, he potentially could be a de facto team principal. He could be the de facto technical director. But I think, Ferrari, should stop throwing out all of these good people just because of some bad decisions, and try and get a bit of direction put back in the team. I think that's really where they are at the moment.
Do you think they're under more threat of being caught by Red Bull than they are of catching Mercedes?
I think it's hard to say. I mean, I think the Ferrari is fundamentally a quicker car than the Red Bull, but Red Bull are being very good with their race strategy. They've been obviously very good with the tyres, as always, leading to that. You've got to say that the Verstappen, Red Bull, and Honda package is looking quite sweet during the races. Gasly is obviously kind of just stepping his way into the team. And obviously, as we know, these tyres are quite difficult, and I think the Red Bull's been quite difficult this year. Verstappen's someone that could drive it with three wheels and one missing. I think Gasly is obviously someone that needs to have it all working quite nicely before he's got the confidence in getting there. So potentially championship wise, even if Ferrari have the better car, it's where you stand at the end of the race, and Ferrari really aren't looking like the team that are going to get it all together over the next few races. So I think that really is a potential that Red Bull and Verstappen could grab the constructors and third in the drivers' championships. It's entirely possible.
We'll probably see a hell of a lot of heads rolling if that happens. You mentioned earlier about.
Yes, I think the Italian press would probably have a field day, wouldn't they? Yeah.
If they're out of contention by Monza, I'm going to learn Italian just to read what it says in Gazzetta dello Sport. You mentioned earlier about McLaren bringing a lot of upgrades with them to Spain. Can you sort of take us through what they had in sort of
so McLaren probably, I think, in layman terms, I mean, if we think back to testing, and the second week of testing, Mercedes came with a very different looking car. There was loads of bits that were different. It was the wing, the barge boards, all these different aspects. But that seemed to us at the time as a big change to the car. But it was very much just working on the same kind of overriding aero philosophy. So how you load the front wing, how you work barge boards and everything else. Mercedes came to Spain with a car that had the same level of changes in terms of the number of parts that were changed, but it wasn't just that they changed all these bits, that they've really gone completely in a different direction on the aero philosophy. And this goes back, as we've sort of said, throughout the year so far, about the front wing. So you have the Ferrari, Alfa Romeo, Toro Rosso wing, which is very flat out by the front tyre and then kind of leans up as it goes inboard to be quite a big wing just inside the front tyre, and then obviously flattens back down towards the middle. And that's what we call an inboard loaded front wing. So what that one's doing is it's trying to pull the wing away from the front wing end plate by the tyre so that the end plate can work much better at managing the airflow that pushes the front tyre wake away from the rest of the car. The downside with that is that you've got slightly more wing in front of the barge board, so the barge boards get slightly better, as good at airflow reaching them. So there's a trade-off there. And McLaren before that had gone for what is effectively the Mercedes Red Bull philosophy, which is called outboard loaded wing. So the wing is steepest out by the end plate in front of the front tyre, which does much less to manage the flow going outside around the front tyre. But because you have a less wing inboard, you get better airflow to the barge board. So the barge boards do more of that work. And both solutions have their pros and cons, and everyone would say one is better than the other and one's got more potential than the other. But it's kind of swings and roundabouts at this stage of the regulations, which one is the actual better one. But McLaren have switched from the Mercedes spec to the kind of the Ferrari spec, which is a huge change. Now, bearing in mind, as I sort of said earlier, McLaren have looked pretty good this year. As good as I think we've ever seen them out of the blocks for almost as long as I can almost remember, when they actually had a good car in the first sort of handful of races. So this is kind of a big risk for them, because does that change mean that they lose some understanding of the car, that the car's going to work in a slightly different way, particularly with the tyres, and that's going to kind of handicap their performance? So you have to kind of keep an eye on them. So, there was the front wing had changed, the turning vanes under the nose had changed, the barge boards had changed, aspects of the floor had changed, pretty much everything all the way to the back of the car. Even the rear wing is different, so it's a huge change for them. I'm trying to remember where they finished up in Spain. I think they had a pretty solid weekend. Probably. I think they both got into quali 3, as I remember. But again, I'm not great for those stats. But
I think Sainz fell out of quali, didn't he?
Norris started 10th, but he gained a place because of penalties. Yeah. But Sainz finished 8th and Norris DNF'd because he finished in Lance Stroll's side pod.
Yes. So I mean, again, they had a pretty good performance there. So hopefully, what they understood of the car early in the season and what they understood of the aero package change meant that they felt confident they could make such a huge change. And I think Spain showed that they didn't do too badly. We've got to remember that Renault in particular had a pretty awful weekend in Spain, so it does somewhat flatter them. But it's brave stuff from McLaren, you have to say, and all the better for it seems.
When you consider how much money Renault are putting into the project, where are they? They should be further up towards Mercedes than they are now.
And what have they got wrong?
Yeah.
Yeah. This is another one of these kind of perennial questions, isn't it? I mean, I think last year they had a really strong year, and for all sort of the Force India problems and the Haas performance, I think they ended up being. I think in championship terms, you could argue because of the way the Force India changed through the year. But in terms of performance, you could probably say that they were the best of the rest last year. And that gave us a really strong feeling that over the winter that they would, make that next step onwards, because they've obviously been on a bit of a journey since Renault came back in, and they've had to upscale what was very much a downscaled operation at Enstone. Literally they were able to move entire departments into or multiple departments into the area where just one department used to live, such as it was the kind of the crash they had. What was that? Was that 2013 when it all kind of went pear-shaped for them over the winter? Yeah. I'm trying to remember now. I think it was around then, wasn't it?
We just remember the truck saying Lotus if you look closely under the Renault stickers.
Yes. I mean, I think over that winter, literally everybody left the operation. So they've been scaling back up and they've been doing a pretty good job. And when I saw the car launch this year, and you saw that they've made, more big steps in the sort of the design of the car and getting rid of pretty much lots of the little bits of legacy design that were sort of throughout the car, you thought, yes, this is the year they really kind of front up the midfield and they can start to kind of bite at the heels of Renault, especially bearing in mind the power unit situation. But we've kind of gone back to where Renault were a couple of years, haven't we? They're struggling with the car, and then again, particularly with the tyres. So that is very kind of, season specific. It's not necessarily part of the trend that they've been going on. But equally, the power unit still isn't there, is it? I mean, we again, I think I've said this to you guys before. Everyone berates Honda, but really, everyone should be having a serious look at Renault and thinking, you've been in this sport, continuously for so many years. You had an extra year over Honda with these power units, yet still yours is probably at least equal least power, probably now the least power. It's certainly the least reliable. Last year they had trouble with drivability. Packaging wise, it still doesn't look like a great engine to package into the chassis, and you just wonder, where some of this direction's coming from. And as you say, the amount of money they're putting in, what happens? Do Renault in Paris pull the plug, which again is quite possible.
They've got previous with that.
They've got previous, and obviously, with Carlos having his problems and no longer being at the helm, there is that risk. Or do they start, looking at the people that are heading up this operation? You've got, Cyril. I think Bob Bell is a great pair of hands. Nick Chester as well is a great pair of hands. But is this a little bit kind of Williams-esque? Do they need someone there that really is driven to deliver a race-winning team, which is really what their aim must be with their budget, with their resources? So maybe personnel changes is what's needed. Because you just don't get that feeling when you look at Renault that there isn't anyone there banging their hand on the desk going, look, this just isn't good enough. We must be winning. And it's not going to happen this year, clearly. And, looking at where they have been for the past few races, you would question whether, where they're going to end up in the championship. They're not going to be the best of the rest. They could be behind Haas and McLaren. It's a pretty woeful position for them to be in, bearing in mind where they were last year and where their trend should be, sort of setting them.
I can't help thinking that if they don't improve this year and they go into next year into a similar situation, it's going to be going into 2021 that Renault might just decide enough's enough.
Yeah, again, that's entirely possible. And when you look at the sort of the potential team principals floating around, is there someone that you would want to parachute into Renault to do the job? I'm struggling to think of names that would be really good for that. You kind of want a Flavio figure back in, a kind of Sergio Marchionne. I'm going to take no crap. We're just going to get this done. Whether you lot working for me like it or not, we're going to get there. And I think a few teams are kind of struggling for that lack of strong dictatorial, sadly, leadership.
Bob Fernley's back on the market as of this moment.
Yes, he is. I don't know if he's the right person for that, but yeah, sadly. And again, that was quite interesting, the reporting around that. It's like his contract finished with Indy. And it's like some people are saying he's been fired. Some people say his contract's up and he's left the team. And McLaren going to continue to run an Indy team. I don't know. It's a shame, but I don't think it was the problems they had were through issues with Bob directly. He seemed to be a fairly safe pair of hands and was getting the job done and had a huge operation set up. But Indy is one of those races which really rewards experience and a fresh team. Even if you bring heads in from other teams with that experience, it's difficult to get that to gel, especially in year one. So they really were up against it, weren't they?
Yeah, it would have been interesting to see what the car would have performed like if it had actually got through qualifying. But we're not going to find out this year.
I mean, it looked a handful constantly through qualifying, didn't it, really? I mean, at no point did it look like that was a race-winning car because it was
dangerous at times.
It just didn't look like it was dialed in. And again, that is all experience from the entire team. working together. So I think that's where the failure was. Do they keep at it for 5 years to get that experience built up? Because I think Fernando won't be around in the years to come. If even this week, if he's kind of thrown it in with McLaren.
Yeah, I was saying before we started recording, I think that's Alonso and McLaren finished at the end of this year.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I can't see. I mean, I don't know what he's going to do instead, but I think probably the Indy Championship would be a nice challenge for him, because I think he would enjoy. The lifestyle and everything over there around the paddock and living in America. But yeah, I mean, I think I did see a tweet. I wish I could credit who it was, because they basically said that he did get the Triple Crown with McLaren because he failed to win Monaco, Le Mans, and Indy 500 with McLaren. So
that sounds like one of Sean Kelly's, to be honest.
It could well be. I just thought it was a genius tweet. And it's like, yeah, that's absolutely the case. It's a case of failure to deliver on those pairings.
I still think there's going to be a shock return to Ferrari for Fernando to replace Vettel.
God, that would be a shock. Maybe he could come. Maybe he could become a team principal. Maybe he's the right sort of guy for that. He's pretty driven.
That's always what I thought he was hanging around with McLaren for after he finished racing, to move into some sort of managerial position within McLaren.
Yeah, I mean that's possible. I think he's still got a couple of years of wanting to be a driver in him. Still, I think he's obviously got itchy feet in that respect. But yeah, I mean, I think under the right circumstances, I think he could potentially be a fantastic team principal, especially one of that just demands everything rather than trying to be the nice guy. Because we know that Fernando isn't Mr. Nice Guy within the team.
Well, Fernando takes over McLaren and then waits for them to get a car together, and then he's the first Formula One player manager.
Yeah, would be possible.
Getting back to Formula One, but kind of staying on the American side of things, Haas really have been struggling in the early part of the season.
Yes.
Yeah. What the hell? I mean, they're having problems with the rear of the car, which, from what I've read from various sources, is 90% of the rear of the Ferrari, or as much as is legal. And as you said earlier, Craig, they are struggling like nobody's business with getting the tyres to actually work. What do you think they could do better at?
I think as you say, there's a couple of issues there. I think most of it is coming from
Is
the
it called
tyres.
Roman and Magnussen?
Yeah, I mean, don't get me started on Magnussen, but in terms of the tyres, they're having this weird thing where they can get them on in qualifying, but they just don't get anywhere in the race. And the race pace is just absolutely awful. And then once you start to lose tyre temperature, and again, partly because of the thin gauge, but also because of the rear tyre temperature, it's very hard to get the tyre temperature into the tyres. Now, obviously,
at least this season they're actually keeping the tyres on the car long enough for them to turn round a little bit.
Well, yeah, they're fitting them with the nuts tight enough for most of the races this year, maybe not all of them. But I think what you've got is they've been trying to get more temperature into the from the brakes into the wheel, into the tyre, to try and improve that through the races. And they've actually got to the stage where the brakes have been overheating from this, which is obviously another kind of perennial thing. So what Haas have effectively got is they've got a bit of a hangover from Ferrari, because the brake ducts and the brakes and all of that assembly inside the wheel is Ferrari designed. So much like they had issues with brakes a couple of years ago, they now need to take the design of all of that aspect, particularly with the brake ducts, maybe not so much with the upright and the axles and the brake caliper itself, is actually take that stuff in-house now and start to understand how to. In fact, they're going to have to, because the regulations change next year anyway. But they need to take this design in-house so that they can actually have some influence over the brake duct design to make it do what they want to do. And this is, part of the hangover of being a listed parts team. Then the other issue they've got, which is what you kind of pointed out, is that the big chunks of the car are Ferrari, but what isn't Ferrari is the aerodynamics. So they don't run the same level of downforce as Ferrari have, and they don't have the level and the consistency of downforce as Ferrari have. Therefore, all of the things that Ferrari design into the car to get tyres to work, with the suspension and the brakes and the brake ducts to get the heat and all the geometry right. Haas have got that as a legacy from being a Ferrari customer, but that is good in some respects. I mean, they don't have a massive design department and they get loads of really good parts delivered to them. But if they can't load them up the same way Ferrari have with downforce, then they're always going to be somewhat handicapped. And I think that's what we're seeing a little bit this year. And it's just the sort of the struggles of the format that they have. If they have a problem, it's quite hard for them to overcome it if it's based around Ferrari parts. So I think the rear end wobble is more to do with tyres and how they have to get the car to react rather than, something actually weird with the Ferrari setup they've got there. But again, when you sort of see it, they're a bit like Ferrari. Underlying, you can see that there's some pace there. I think qualifying shows that, moments during the race when everything's working for them shows that as well. So I think, Haas really just needs to kind of sort the brake cooling out, get a bit more downforce on the car, and then I still think that they're quite a weak team in terms of their race operation. We had the pit stop issues last year, we joke about, and they had some issues this year as well. You've got the driver discipline, as we saw in Spain. It just
and everywhere else.
Everywhere else. Magnussen's not the easiest person to get past at any point during a race. He's quite bloody-minded about how he defends, which isn't necessarily always the right way to tackle a race if it's going to kill your pace.
Or your teammate.
Or your teammate. So yeah, really, I think Haas are just kind of going through growing pains, really, aren't they? And we have to remember that they are only now in their 4th season, so they've only got 3 full seasons behind them. So as a race operation, it's still really young in Formula One terms. So they've still got a bit more growing to do. And again, they're kind of reaching that stage. They were talking when I first spoke to Gunter before they actually entered Formula One, and had a long conversation with about what's your strategy, at what point do you go away from being a listed parts supplier and becoming a bit more of a constructor. And that was all built around a 5-year plan. And if we look at then 2021 coming up, how are they going to change the way they operate as a Formula One team in the years to come? And they've kind of been able to grow a little bit because of the Ferrari relationship, but there's still lots of maturing as a team that they need to kind of go through.
Do you think the coming 2021 rules, wherever they are going to force them to have to start making their own parts more?
Not necessarily, because as far as I know, I think there will be some change to the listed parts, but I don't think it's going to be, a dramatic change. I think there'll be already the brake ducts have been dropped from the listed parts for 2020, which will have an effect on them. And I think for 2021, for a start, you're going to get loads of the spec parts anyway. So that will make almost no difference. Maybe they will take on some more aspects. Maybe they will, maybe do their own front suspension, for example, which is quite an easy thing for them to take on board, and it'll be quite a big performance differentiator for them compared with, Ferrari, just to have to sort of play around. So, I think hopefully they will move slightly towards being more of a constructor than just a pure listed parts company. But yeah, again, we'll see what the regulations are going to change to.
I mean, one thing that they must be concerned about when the spec parts come in 2021, if it actually happens, is it's going to be the brakes, because I've seen that brakes are going to be standard, and Grosjean has been struggling with the brakes on that car since he first got into it. And what the hell's going to happen then? Because there's going to be nothing you can change.
Well, there's two questions there. One will Grosjean be there in 2021?
Well, he seems to be bulletproof for some reason.
Yes, yeah, you get these drivers in F1, don't you? Just kind of like the sort of Nick Heidefelds and Heinz Hamel, for instance, that just kind of just keep their career going and going.
I was staggered how long Ericsson had been in Formula One when he retired.
But with the listed parts, I mean, you've got kind of two issues around the brakes. As you say, it would be everything from the brake pedal, master cylinder, the brake caliper, and the brake material will be standard across the field.
No
so
excuses.
if the driver can't get the feel that they want from that setup, then it's going to be very difficult for the teams to do anything to modify this. So that will be quite a big issue. The other issue, and it depends on who gets the brake material contract, is consistency and supply. Because a lot of the problems that Haas had a couple of years ago weren't so much that the brakes would always be awful, but they were finding that the material was quite inconsistent. And changing suppliers kind of helped that, but also gave a different feel at the same time. So, I think there's a lot of people are going to be moaning. I think there's a few team principals in particular in the paddock in 2021. If they find that the package doesn't work perfectly for them, they're going to be moaning like hell to every TV camera and every journalist they can get their hands on, because they feel kind of cheated that they've had this pushed upon them. But I'm still of the opinion spec parts is as much as we know is going to be happening for 2021 so far is a good thing. I don't think it's necessarily a night and day difference in terms of cost saving or equalising the field, but I think it's just some fairly sensible stuff that can be put in there ahead of hopefully a bit more of a robust budget cap.
Have you heard any more things come forward about what the 2021 rules are going to be? Because there seems to be a little bit more positivity coming out of team bosses and stuff at the minute.
The trouble is it's all swings and roundabouts. There is some good stuff happening. So we've got a whole load of listed parts which we know about. We know the power units aren't really going to change for 2021. And we've seen some of the aero concepts which are still being thrashed out. And obviously, again, there's some teams that are against it and some teams that are against the timing of it. So you'd get a team like Red Bull, which would feel aggrieved because they're very much an aero team. And if they're going to simplify the aero, then it's kind of going against what one of their key points is. And then obviously for the lesser funded teams, and I think it's Racing Point. I think I was calling them Force India earlier. I have to remember it is Racing Point, isn't it?
Pounded the swear jar.
Isn't it Racing Point and about 50 other words as well?
Yeah. I think they were concerned about the timing of the confirmation of the regulations as well. So obviously they didn't want the big teams to have 2 full years to get prepared for it. And they wanted to kind of shorten that a little bit in order to try and hope that their agility would maybe get them a bit of an advantage. So exactly what they're doing with the aero is still very much up in the air. I know that we saw the concepts, or some CFD pictures went round from Race Car Engineering magazine, which were wholly accurate in terms of what the teams have been playing with. Maybe in terms of timescale, they were a little bit earlier than they were released, but they were kind of about the direction that they were going, and the direction that they're trying to get to is very good from my point of view in terms of improving overtaking. It's all the right. There's lots of good things that they're doing there. So whether we will ever get there is really debatable. I mean, Formula One is a really good way of having some really great ideas and great rules, and then at the last minute watering them down to have effectively no impact whatsoever. And we've seen that with pretty much every big rule change that I can think of since probably 1982. So like the 2009 regulations were, ended up being massively watered down. The 2014 ones were watered down. I think there was one in between and maybe one before 2009 when they were talking about going to ground effects and stuff that all, have fallen by the wayside and effectively been pretty ineffective as rule changes. These ones truly have the potential to be a step change in how the sport works. So they really should work, and I hope they should get through without too much interfering from the teams and just let Ross Brawn's design team, kind of dictate what should be done.
I saw an interview,
and then new tyres as well. I forgot about those. Yeah,
I saw an interview with Ross Brawn and Martin Brundle, and Ross was saying that the cars now lose about 50% of the downforce when they're following another car, and his proposal for the new aero regs would mean the car was only losing 5% of its downforce. Is that realistic, or is it just sort of cool media talk to put out in an interview?
I got to say, losing 5% sounds. It doesn't sound like real physics, because at the end of the day, when one car moves through the air, it's pushing all of the air out of the way and pushing in different directions, taking the energy out of it, regardless of what aero it's got. So even if you were following a Formula Ford, and another Formula Ford came behind it, you're going to still lose much of that airflow. And that's great for slipstreaming, but obviously it's really bad for overtaking if you want to create downforce. I haven't heard those comments, but there's two aspects to this. First of all, you've got what the car ahead is leaving behind in terms of its wake, and what the regulations this year, especially the regulations for 2021, are trying to reduce the size of that wake coming behind it, where it's positioned, and how clean that wake will actually end up. That is probably more important in some respects than what you do to the aero to the car behind. But what they're also trying to do, which is what they tried to do in 2019, is to try and make the aero on the car following less sensitive to sitting in that wake as well. So there's two aspects to it. So yeah, it will have a huge impact. Whether it's down to 5% loss of downforce, I find that almost too hard to believe. But if Ross Brawn has quoted that, then I'll he kind of knows this stuff. All of us, so we'll give the benefit of the doubt on that one.
Do you think Ross Brawn might be looking at more of a ground effect formula, sort of aero-wise, getting rid of the not getting rid of the aero on the top, top planes of the car?
It's very much trying to take a lot more downforce from the underbody. We call it ground effect, which is a bit of a misnomer, really, because the car really works in ground effect even now. But it's much more trying to create wing from the downforce with the underbody, much less from the rear wing, which is a big contributor to weight. And because of that, because the underfloor tends to create downforce that's balanced a bit better front to rear, it means that if you create lots of downforce from the underbody, you don't need much of a front wing either. So the front wings that they're playing with are just three elements, and don't have this middle section. So you lose all the turbulence from the Y250 area as well. So, there's lots of clever stuff that they're doing. And the thing with these regulations is that they will only work if that you introduce the full package in terms of aero changes. You can't
can't milk
pick
it
and choose a couple.
Yeah,
you can't pick and choose a few bits of it and go, we're only going to do them. It will only work if you take the whole setup. And that's my concern, what is going on in the meetings that I think are happening through June, to come to some conclusion with these regulations to get them signed off.
And of course, there is still one topic that we haven't touched on tonight: Williams.
God,
you've been dreading us saying this, haven't you?
Well, I think every time we sit down and talk, we kind of roll our eyes, whatever the podcast equivalent rolling your eyes is.
At least we haven't been wrong so far.
Where Williams are at. And, this year really isn't any improvement in any aspect of the team. The car has got some fundamental problems. It even seems that, from one car to another, they have fundamental problems. And I don't know how much of that maybe is, what Kubica is saying, or if that is actually the case. Williams seem to think it isn't. There's some evidence from the last test that Russell ran the other car and it was just as quick.
He was a second quicker in quali, wasn't he?
Yeah, and again, we get. I don't know if you've seen these graphs from the FIA which show you slow speed performance of the cars relative to each other, medium speed, high speed, and top speed of the car.
Where do we get these from?
Well, they tend to be tweeted out a lot, but I think they actually come on the FIA press release at some point through the weekend. And they're fantastic. Actually give you exactly where it is, but you can spot the Williams because the Williams colour is grey, and they have the longest bar in all of the charts, so they're slowest compared to whoever the fastest car is in the slow corners, in the medium speed corners, in the high speed corners, and there's just nowhere the Williams is good by some margin. So then you look at what the hell are they doing at the factory? What are they doing to rectify the situation? Our bright idea to bring Patrick Head back into the team, I think when we spoke back in March, actually happened, which I had to laugh at. And from what I understand, he's there as a consultant, and I think everything I've heard about what his involvement has been is that he's very much taken a back seat to all of this and isn't coming in as a technical director and isn't, banging his fist on the desk to get things sorted. So I think his impact there is not as great as I think perhaps we would have hoped if he was given maybe a bit more authority in that position.
I think he needs to do more shouting.
Paddy Lowe is still on conditional leave as far as I understand, and that whatever the excuse they came out with when he disappeared before, I think it was Melbourne, wasn't it? It clearly wasn't the true situation. And I can see absolutely no way out for the team from this current problem. And I think, I don't know if we said it in our last chat, or maybe it was something I had on over Twitter with someone, is that I think we potentially could lose Williams or some of their senior management before the end of the year. It's a horrible thought, really.
I still think the whole Paddy Lowe thing's amazing because it's not like that man forgot how to do his job in between switching teams.
No. Paddy has been very much a scapegoat there, and I think a lot of the problems the team have got are legacy issues from how it's been run from a number of people over the past few years, and the conditions in which Paddy was allowed to operate, which was completely wrong. Bearing in mind, Paddy went through McLaren, he set up Mercedes. He can't. As much as one man isn't the team, he knows how to organise a team if he's left to get on with it. And I still think he's someone the team should have back and have perhaps even in a bigger position than just technical director. Maybe he needs to be, kind of deputy team principal or something, or something along those lines, where he has some clout and utter authority over the team to kind of get them where they need to be. If it's not him, I think, again, that they're, like we said before, they're one of those teams that need a kind of a big dictatorial person to come in and actually just drive the team to where they need to be, because they're going backwards at a rate of knots, which is really sad to see as a Formula One fan, sort of since the 80s.
Are we saying that all these broken teams can be fixed with Flavio Briatore
or Ron Dennis?
Yes, I mean, it's weird, isn't it? It's if you speak to any management consultant in a normal business, they'll come out with a kind of very much Ron Dennis kind of a matrix structure where it's all, everyone's equal and fair. But in a Formula One team, you need someone to drive it forwards. I think it just because you need to be a small and agile team and everyone needs to be really pulling in one specific direction. You can't just have a big kind of conglomerate of people trying to reach a consensus, because that just doesn't work, which seems to be fairly unique to Formula One. I can't think of any other environments apart from something that's very entrepreneurial, or maybe like SpaceX or, kind of your Elon Musk type things, where someone can have a big impact. But I think Formula One is very much one of those environments. It's very much kind of bucks the book of management trend.
I would be on board with an Elon Musk-led Formula One team, just so it's out there.
It's great at Williams. Can we try and should we say that out loud now? Because obviously Patrick Headley works, didn't it?
Tesla Formula One. Oh no, wait, no, we can't do that.
You do
Yeah,
the
it needs to come-
incantation, I'll sacrifice the chicken.
Yeah, either comes and runs Ferrari or Williams. One of those, something like that. Yes, or Renault.
Well, we're 1-1 with people coming into Williams' predictions so far this season, so we've got a good run going.
Has there been anything more said in the paddock about the Mazepin buy-in?
I'm not quite sure what's going on with that. I was kind of picked up some of the conversations last year, and they were obviously they had money and they were looking at what was then Force India and obviously around Williams with the potential of the Strolls sort of moving out from there. And I haven't heard anything else since. I mean, I think something has happened commercially over in Russia that may alter that. But, I think they are walking around with a kind of a pocket full of cash and looking for somewhere to spend it. And a lot of people were courting Williams last year. And from what I can understand is that Williams kind of pushed everybody away because they had kind of unrealistic expectations of what they wanted. How much money they wanted for what they could offer. And that money ended up sort of kind of going elsewhere. As you say, there's still lots of Russian money sort of floating around. But, again, I don't know if that is I think money would help Williams, certainly. But I don't think that is the kind of the answer to their problems, really.
I just found it interesting because with Mazepin doing quite well very well in his Mercedes test, and going fastest on the day he was in, I thought maybe that might kickstart this whole thing a bit.
Well, this is it. I think Mercedes do look like they're, are looking for a bit more of a B team. I mean, I think it seems to be something. I don't know if it's been said explicitly by Toto or anyone else from the team, but it certainly does look like they're trying to do a bit more. But obviously, you've now got the Strolls in forming Racing Point. I don't know how far the Williams would want to go to that. But Claire has said some quite odd things about buying in gearboxes and stuff, which really, again, is a 1 minute they're for it, next minute they're against it, next minute they're mentioning it again. I find it hard to believe Williams would buy in lots of parts from Mercedes. Obviously they're quite happy to have a driver placed there and take some money from that, but. I don't know. I mean, it's just such a, everything. If the stars could line up and you could actually see how Williams could suddenly, get the money, get the Mercedes input, get a good driver, and potentially have some other people there, and really kind of bounce back. But I just don't see that is lining up to be a reality at the moment.
I mean, Claire Williams has officially denied that the team's for sale, so that's usually a good sign that it is.
Well, to be honest, every Formula One team is always up for sale, and the price does vary, how desperate they are to sell. But yeah, I think every team, maybe with a couple of exceptions, would be could be sold to the right person for the right package. Williams, we know that the Strolls put a huge amount of money into them over the past few years, and really has kind of kept, in some respects, Williams afloat, but equally has kind of been the double-edged sword that's probably stabbed Williams in the back at the same time. So, there must be a solution out there for them, but I just can't see anything that's bubbling up at the moment that's going to really make the difference. And again, I don't see Williams necessarily reaching out for that kind of resolution either. So I think it's a difficult situation for them. It's worrying as a fan, as I've sort of said before.
Yeah, I think basically they're just going to be remaining as proud as they are while they're sinking.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's you can do nothing, can sink, or just stay at the back forever. Or you can do something about it. And at the moment, I fear it's one of those former things rather than the latter.
I mean, maybe Williams are pinning the hopes on Renault continuing to get worse.
Yeah, well, maybe they'll beat Ferrari if Ferrari sees a really bad the worst.
Then they would be sacrificing another team principle.
Ferrari would sacrifice Williams.
Probably true, actually. Before you go, Craig, this is something that we started doing on the podcast this season when we do our race predictions, and we've said that every time we have a guest, we get a guest predictor for the top 3 on race preview shows, which this one is. And we said every time we get a guest on, we're going to get their prediction for the top 3. And as you are the first guest that we've had on this season, I'm afraid to say you're going to be the first person that we ask for a race prediction.
Oh, fantastic! That's yeah. Cheers for that. Okay, so we've got the Monaco Grand Prix top 3. Well, I don't think we're going to see Ferrari in the top 3, so we can kind of discount that, which brings us down to just kind of 4 cars, doesn't it? And I'd be surprised if Gasly beat Verstappen in a conventional race with both of them finishing. So that gives us the top 3. Then the order. Oh, God. I don't know if Red Bull are going to have the level of pace around Monaco that will bring them the win. Now, I know it's worked well for them in the past few years. It's possible. I think the best that Red Bull could expect would be to split the Mercedes. So I think it's boring but obvious, but I think the order will be Hamilton, Verstappen, and Bottas.
That is great.
In a normal race with all those other caveats that reliability and rain and what have you. But yeah, I think it could actually end up being quite a dull race once we've got that first lap out of the way, which is rather sad to say.
Unfortunately, because it's Monaco, yeah, probably.
And the cars are about 8 meters long these days.
Well, they are, but there's a video going around of coaches going around the hairpin, and they seem to cope really well. So all this rubbish about wheelbase, it's like, if a coach could get round, keeping on the inside lane.
Maybe that's what Williams need to do.
Run a coach around there.
Yeah.
Well, they can get, 52 pay drivers on board. That might be...
Oh, God, it'll look like NASCAR.
They could have the whole Formula 2, Formula 3 field sat inside one of the coaches.
What a good job it is that HRT isn't still a team with this idea.
And on that note, thanks so much. Thanks so much for coming on again, Craig. It's always great to talk to you.
Always good fun. Always interesting. Thanks for it, guys.
And we'll no doubt speak to you again before much longer in the season.
Yes, well, we've got an interesting summer coming up. So I say interesting. I think maybe you need to look at the midfield rather than at the front. But yeah, I think we've got lots of races still to go through this summer. So let's catch up before the cars will get packed off to the flyaways.
Sounds like a plan to us.
Yep.
Cheers, Craig.
Cheers, Craig. We'll speak to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks very much.
And as always fantastic talking to Scarbs.
Every time, very insightful and full of information.
Yeah. As we said, Craig will be on again later on in the year, and whenever there's updates, he's more than happy to come on, and it's an open invitation to him, basically.
Yeah, hopefully. Should we give him a shout around Hungary time?
That sounds good.
Sounds like a plan. Shall we move on to some news?
News.
Yes, there are newsy things that don't involve the Indy 500 and Fernando Alonso.
Yes.
First one, huge congratulations to Billy Munger.
Absolutely.
Yep. Won the Pau Grand Prix at the weekend.
Yeah, his first win in single seaters.
First win in single seaters since his accident. He had won F4 races before.
Yep. And Euro Formula, isn't it? The Euro Formula. The Open Euro Formula.
Yeah, which is it's what's replaced European Formula 3 because European Formula 3 merged with GP3 to form F3. You keeping up with this? There'll be a test later.
Yeah, but anyway, no, huge congrats. He also, not only did he win the race, he went from last position at the beginning of the race to first position at the end of the race by being a bit cheeky and coming in and changing for wet tyres at the right time.
Did you read the quote? His quote about it? That he had an argument with his engineer on the radio because his engineer was telling him to stay out on slick tyres, and he was saying, no, I need wets, and he was right.
He was right. Yeah, thanks to another team knocking their two drivers knocking each other off the track, causing the safety car, and chances of overtakes. Billy Munger won the race, so well done, Billy Munger.
Apparently, he had broken steering as well.
Amazing.
Talking of which, the winner of this weekend's W Series race had no dashboard apart from red lights.
Ooh.
And she actually had to take a steering wheel off and put it back on, which there's two of us working IT here. That's kind of the equivalent of turning it off and back on again on the grid.
Wow.
So
That's keeping it cool.
that is keeping a cool head. And
it wasn't
did anyone
Jamie
see it?
Chadwick one.
it wasn't Jamie Chadwick that won.
She was second.
She was second. I can't remember the name of the winner, and I should have looked this one up.
But we had news about Jamie Chadwick
Yes, she is now part of the Williams organisation.
as a development driver.
Congratulations.
She'll be working alongside current reserve driver Nicholas Latifi, and she'll be doing a lot of the simulator work. Conspiracy theory time. Is this?
They need an extra hand.
I should have edited that out, but I couldn't be bothered. Conspiracy.
Just edit the tumbleweed in.
Yeah. Conspiracy theory time. Is it because Nicholas Latifi won't have time to do a lot of simulator work because he'll be too busy driving the car?
It's not a bad call.
Hey, I do get them right more than
Yeah.
twice a day, so I'm better than a stop clock.
Well, we are pretty good with Williams predictions.
One from one so far. Yeah, do you think that could be a thing?
I don't know. I mean, the Canadian Grand Prix is not that far away, is it?
And there was one of the Canadian newspapers. Well, it was reported that one of the Canadian newspapers was speculating that he could be in the car soon, and then I actually read a translation of the newspaper article and said, we would like to see a Canadian driver in the car soon.
Right.
There just happens to be a Canadian driver on the outskirts of the team.
They saw a Canadian driver in the car last year.
They're greedy. They want another. They want two Canadians on the grid.
Turns out that the Canadians are a little bit like Germans in the way that it's not like what you are. It's the perfect one. Like the Germans didn't really take to any other German driver apart from Schumacher.
Heinz Harald who?
Yeah.
Rosberg won a championship? Nah.
Sebastian 4 World Championships? What? No. Isn't he English?
Yeah.
Talking of nationalities and the drivers, did anyone see that article in Autosport last week about the top 15 Dutch drivers after the Zandvoort announcement?
There's been 15 Dutch drivers.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
I'm reading it, it's like 10, 15, 14. Jan Lammers, right, we're into familiar territory now.
Was Robert Doorknobs in there?
I think he was fourth.
Oh no!
It's not the best pedigree then. So Max is the best then.
The top two surnames were both Verstappen.
Right, okay.
Jos did get podium.
And that's why he's the second best.
Yes.
Yeah, the top five were Jan Lammers, Robert Doorknobs, and I can't even remember the third one he's been racing in the last few years. Oh, Guido van der Garde.
Oh,
Guido van der Garde.
Yeah, and then a pair of Verstappens, and there was these other 10 that I'm like... And this guy did the first 13 laps of the 1952 Dutch Grand Prix until he gave his car to his teammates. Like, you are really scraping the barrel on this one.
We like the Dutch, but that's a strange list.
Yeah, it's a strange list.
I think this was Autosport desperately trying to fill up some space.
Yes.
Was it like Thursday?
Yeah. Holland's big. What can we do about Holland?
Baking.
We can do another
Wouldn't
story
you
on Max.
do the top 5 drivers, though? Unless you're being paid by the word.
I think there were in that case.
Was Johan Cruyff in the list?
He was lousy in a straight line, but great at turns.
Okay, fair enough.
Football joke there for anyone else apart from Chris that got that.
It was a good joke.
I think that's probably about it for the news this week, isn't it? Because
Well, there's a potential of a Morocco GP that's been bandied about, but we're unsure as to...
Well, apparently Liberty are very keen to get a Grand Prix in Africa, aren't they?
And they've been talking to Marrakesh, which is where obviously the E-Prix takes place when Formula E go there. So we've been talking a lot about in the past about how Formula E, we'd like to see how well a Formula E race goes on a Formula 1 circuit. What we might actually see is the reverse of that, and a Formula 1 race taking place on an already established Formula E circuit. So
I can't help think that if it's the same as a Formula E circuit, that's going to be a bad Formula One race.
well, I would think that too, because narrow and also concrete blocks everywhere.
Yeah, and it's the fact that the chicanes in Formula E circuits don't tend to be chicanes; they tend to be Zs as well.
And the hairpins tend to be
Walls.
pretty much. I mean, the other option for a race somewhere in Africa, the obvious call would be the return of racing at Kyalami.
Yeah, South Africa.
Toto can't go to Africa. Don't be stupid.
He can if it's a wet race.
Oh dear!
God.
But only if he hopes for it.
Yeah, that's true.
He'd just take the weekend off, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
Like a weekend off on compassionate leave.
Yeah.
They'd have to replace him with at least 1,000 men or more.
10 points to the first. 10 points to the first presenter who goes up to Toto and goes, Toto, Africa. What about Morocco then?
I mean, apparently Kyalami is almost F1 suitable again, which apparently is the state that Zandvoort's in at the minute.
Well, I remember the last race that they had at Kyalami. I remember watching it. 93.
93.
Yeah, one of Damon Hill. I think Damon Hill's first race or one of his first races. And he got spun about a little bit at the beginning of the race. And everyone was like, this new Williams driver is terrible. He's down to 7th.
Oh, those were the days.
I know, yeah.
But no, it would be good because I mean Africa's the only continent without a race on,
Which is exactly what
apart from Antarctica. But I'm sure Red Bull will be doing demonstration runs around there before much longer.
That's exactly what Sean Bratches was saying. He was saying, you know, the habitable continents that we race on, Africa's the only one that we don't go to. So,
I mean Morocco's practically Europe.
Well, it's Africa, but yeah.
Yeah.
North Africa, yeah.
Well, no, it'd be an interesting one to keep an eye on, and obviously this calendar's going to have to increase from 21 to the 25 races they want to fit all these new supposed circuits in.
Well, I've said that, but the teams, or Christian
May not be
Horner
for next
doesn't
year.
seem to be particularly down on it when he was talking about it.
Well, no, the staying at 21. You can guess where that's come from because who has the veto?
Mm. Well, I don't think they're going to keep that. I think that'll be gone by the time new regs come in.
Well, it's the agreement to only have 21 races is for next year.
Oh yeah.
So if 2021 happens in 2021, that's when the whole
Which
thing
calendars predict it should.
Yeah. Barring meteors.
You can predict the tide within like 1 second, 100 years in the future, and yet we don't know what's going to happen in 2 years' time.
I know, it's great, isn't it?
You can predict the tide with the accuracy of 1 second for 100 years. Yet I always seem to get caught out by the bloody swing bridge when I'm walking out of my house and going into town.
I was doing it in the morning the other day. It was like 7:45 in the morning that it was doing it. I was like, what, you idiots.
2 weeks ago, it got us at quarter to flipping midnight.
Yeah. Who's sailing their boat in or out of a harbour at quarter to midnight?
There is a story about that which we'll save for the Patreon show.
Okay.
It involves somebody being drunk. Unsurprisingly, but it wasn't me. Right, Monaco this weekend.
It is.
Yes.
How do you like your processions?
I like them paradey.
Yes.
That sounded rude.
How would you like your procession today, sir?
How are your processions doing?
Yeah.
You all right?
Yeah.
They get a little bit overwarm.
Yeah, the left one's swollen.
There are tablets you can have for that. Yeah, it's the annual parade in front of a load of yachts.
And people who don't care about Formula One.
Half the paddock.
Yeah.
Right.
I wouldn't give a fuck tomorrow if Monaco was taken off the calendar.
I think the teams would complain tomorrow if it was taken off because they're already all out there.
I don't think they would, because they live there.
Yeah, true.
I think it should be on the calendar, but I don't think it should be a championship event.
Yeah, you said that. That might not be a stupid idea.
An exhibition.
Just watch. They'll take it off the championship, keep it on the calendar, and we will have some of the best racing that we've ever seen the first year that happens.
Yeah. Well, no, but the thing is, if that was to get taken off the calendar, even though every year people go, I hate Monaco, it's a procession, it's boring. The minute Formula One turned around and said, right, we're not going to Monaco anymore, the internet would melt down that you're taking the jewel away from the sport.
It would also melt down when it was brought back into the sport.
Well, why are you bringing the procession back?
Stupid internet.
Because people are rubbish.
Yeah, it's a race it's not won on the Saturday, but I mean it's very easily, you can put yourself in a place where you're going to have it won on the Saturday, unless shenanigans.
Rain. If there's no rain at Monaco's not a good race.
And there's a possibility of rain this year.
Say, the good news is it might.
The long range weather forecast is saying rain all weekend.
Now and again, a safety car towards the end of the race can make it something too.
Yeah, but I mean, it's just so difficult to pass at Monaco, isn't it? I mean, you can't do anything about it. You can't widen the circuit because buildings, you know.
Well, you can, but I think a lot of the apartment owners would have something to complain about.
Yeah, exactly. There's passing opportunities. You got into turn one, really, haven't you? And then maybe out of the tunnel into the chicane, possibly if you're close enough and brave enough on the brakes. I'm sure we'll see Verstappen giving it a go.
What's the second to last corner?
Raskas.
That's you can kind of barge your way through there if you're brave.
Well, do you remember when the Saubers tried to do it and both ended up facing sideways and into the barriers?
Yeah, but someone's managed it at some point.
But then you got Jules Bianchi a few years ago managing to barge Marussia all the way up to 10th place, was it? 9th place?
Ninth.
Yeah.
I don't think he barged it up though, did he? Didn't a load of car barge themselves out?
No, he did
exactly 15 finishes that year.
Yeah, he did exactly what you were saying then. Barged his way through at the Raskas and pushed two cars out of the way. Went, no, I'm coming through. See you later.
So I mean, it is possible to pass, but you just don't see it all that often. And yeah, I think there's more of a chance of it being won on outright qualifying pace, and it's just a case of getting your car out at the right time to get a decent lap in when there's no other slower cars on track. So,
because traffic's a problem during qualifying as well.
For me, that rules Ferrari out of getting anything out of this.
Absolutely.
Because it relies on strategists. And I don't think they'll pick the right numbers out of the hat again this week.
Well, the worst part of Spain for them was the twisty circuit bit, wasn't it?
The slow corners.
Yeah, so they're going to be fucked from Monaco.
And as we were just saying before with Scarbs, the best part, Mercedes Arsenal at the moment is being quick round slow corners.
Enjoy that hill.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be a long weekend for Ferrari. Well, it's going to be a long weekend for all the teams because FP1's on Thursday.
And 77 laps as well, or 78 laps around Monaco.
Yeah.
Although all Ferrari would need to do is get a good start and get into the lead. Then you can be much slower than anyone else.
They need to have a
and
good Saturday. A good Saturday is what they need. Be cleverer than everyone else on a Saturday. I don't know how they're going to do that.
I think Leclerc's going to crash in qualifying.
Do you?
Yeah.
In his home race. Don't forget he's a Monegasque driver.
I also think that won't be the other big scalp that goes out either. I think Max Verstappen will crash during the race.
Ooh.
Because he'll be in a position not to fight the Mercedes because they won't be close enough. And Max has looked like he's overdriving that car a little bit at times this year. He
did bin it in qualifying last year at the swimming pool.
Yeah,
and the year before.
Yeah,
and the year before.
Yeah,
but if he's trying to make time up in a car around Monaco, it doesn't usually end well for people.
The only thing that could save anyone really from having a sort of non-conformity race really would be rain on the Saturday and not on the Sunday.
That would actually throw up a very interesting result because you would see cars starting out of position and defending the places.
Can we not just have rain on Saturday and Sunday?
Yeah, that might happen. That might happen. Who knows?
The problem is that with too much rain on the Sunday, you'll end up with a safety car, and then that'll just be a slightly slower parade. And Bernd Mailander wins driver of the day.
I don't know what the forecast is.
Can you vote Bernd Mailander for driver of the day?
I don't think you can at the moment, but we should start a campaign because our hashtags work dead well.
Yeah,
between the four of us.
Yes.
What's
trying to get
hashtag burnt DOD.
What's that?
Bernd Mailander, driver of the day.
Oh right, okay. No, I was trying to work out the other hashtags.
What, the ones that have worked really well?
Yeah.
None of them.
Right, okay.
I was joking. You put too much thought into that.
I know. I thought we genuinely had one that we tried to show. Oh yeah. Hashtag your voice in F1 didn't take off.
No, it didn't.
Somebody bought a hashtag Jack Attack t-shirt last week.
Did they?
Yes.
That's good. Like it.
Jack Attack is, of course, coming around again. And he did ruin my entire Spotify listening figures for 2018. Because he was right at the top of my listening figures. Because I was one of these people, and I'm sure there are other people as well who, listeners who did this, where you put Jacques Villeneuve on as you went to bed with your phone on mute and just let it play on repeat all night. And I did this for several nights, which meant that Jacques Villeneuve was my number one played song in 2018.
How many times did you play him?
100 and something. I can't remember, or 200 and something.
That must be.
That will have earned him nearly 100th of a Canadian cent.
That's like a 10,000th of a loony.
The thing is, I don't know if anybody else has this, but
a fish in real money.
if he has Spotify for artists, he will have been really confused that week.
I think he stopped looking at his plays a long time ago.
We inflicted a mate of mine, Mark, who was a new guitarist in my band, and a massive Yngwie Malmsteen, Steve Vai, twiddly widdly guitar music fan, to fooling around on Saturday night. And Dan, you saw the look on his face.
Yes.
I've never heard "What the hell is this?" spoken with so much conviction in my life.
And bearing in mind this was Eurovision
And
night.
yeah, we just sat through all the Eurovision Song Contest as well.
Oh dear.
Shall we do some predictions for this weekend?
Let's go for it.
Right. Obviously, you've already heard Scarbs.
Yes.
Because we got him to predict first. I have Sean's here, and she's going for a Bottas win with Verstappen second and Hamilton third. Who wants to go up next?
I'll go.
Okay.
Hamilton, Bottas, Lando.
Interesting.
I'm amazed you didn't go Hamilton, Lando, Alonso, because he's got nothing else to do this Sunday.
That's true. You'd be in that Ferrari I keep trying to give to him.
Dan?
Hamilton, Bottas, Vettel.
Going against the expert opinion.
I know, yeah.
I
What's
know.
this all about? I'm going to go against the expert opinion as well.
It's all right. It's fucking McLaren.
I think Verstappen's going to bin it, and Gasly is not going to be in fourth place when he does.
I think McLaren are going to be best of the rest. And like you say, Lando has when given a clean race in GP3 in GP2 had this ability to make sure his car was on the podium all the time.
I'm going to say Hamilton, Bottas, Leclerc.
And I will go I'm going Hamilton, Bottas, Verstappen.
Again, no Gasly from anybody. I went.
Ain't
Lando.
nobody got
Still
no
Gasly.
Ain't nobody got no gas.
Anybody would think he's having a Gasly season.
Yeah, exactly. Oh dear.
Have I just put the tumbleweed in again?
It's the fifth time I've used that this year. Expect to hear it more.
Yeah.
Same with the tumbleweed.
Right, I'm going to write to him and ask him to just
Change his name
No, buck up his ideas. Start doing a bit better because we're tired of Lee's joke.
and change your name to Great Leap.
If you want to join in with the predictions, if you go to the website and go to the games section, you will see the 2019 Prediction League on there. Give us your top three, and as an added extra, your pole position and fastest lap, and see how you compare to us and everybody else on the leaderboard. I think we've couple of hundred people on there now.
I do enjoy the player who keeps going for Robert Kubica for win and fastest lap.
It's a brave choice.
Even a stopped... No, not even that stopped clock. Obviously, we'll be doing the live blog.
Even a stopped clock has one hand working.
Oh, God. We will be doing the live blog on Sunday. I think executive...
Hashtag Robert the Sundial.
I'm letting that one slip. It's
Oh
late.
no, it's gone downhill so fast. I'm so sorry, everyone.
So we'll be doing the live blog on Sunday, but I think executive decision, seeing as there isn't really any McLaren interest in the Indy 500, I'm not going to bother doing that one. We'll be around on Twitter.
I might have paid attention if there was someone to pay attention to, but there isn't, so I'm probably not going to.
Marcus Ericsson.
Yeah, again, I
Monaco
reiterate
can't be
my
as
point.
boring as Spain was.
Is that your bold prediction of the week?
Yeah.
What if Alonso turns up in Monaco because he hasn't got to be at Indy?
Jensen will wee in his seat.
So does that mean he's going to turn up in Super G? No, not even. Shall we shunt it?
Yeah.
Let's go for a shunt. And who is this week's from? Oh, have you fact checked it? Because you're having to fact check earlier.
Yeah, it wasn't so much fact checking.
But fact hunting.
Yeah, I needed to find out which one.
Who the fact it was?
Yeah, I needed to find out which one it was. If you do this, because I'm happy that you don't. Maybe some of you don't think this, but I'm a fucking idiot. So I'd like.
No, I think a lot of people do think
Well,
that.
you'd think that, but it doesn't seem to be the case. So yeah, if you're going to send a total shunt in, tell me what the fuck it is.
Give the answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The quizmaster needs to know this.
Who sent this one in without the answer?
This was sent in by... Oh, motherfucker.
That's a name you can't pronounce.
Are they from Ireland?
Rune, no, sorry, it's okay. I have got the first one. His first name's Rune. Rune Wenzel Herms.
That sounds Dutch. Okay.
Continuing our run of Netherlands-related total shunts, we've had 2 Dutch drivers and now this.
Dutch shunts.
He's done you on a question here. He's had you off.
Go on.
Because the first question is, I was born...
Yes.
At least it's a good first question. ...
When?
Right, so as clues go, this driver was, or inanimate object or team, was born.
This thing.
It's always a good start to life.
Question 2. I was created in 1920.
Now you see, I'm gonna pull him up here in his question setting because he
That's
could have
kind
gone.
of the first
I was born in 1920. That would have been fine.
Yeah, we'd have allowed it.
Yeah, we would have
allowed
done.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would have been fine. It's a slow start.
Mm-hmm.
From Rune?
My first foray into motorsport was a failure.
So, oh God, this is technically clue 3.
Well, no, it's not because we don't have any extra clues.
Yeah, but you need a guess on this one.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what. We'll go with something along the lines of the first question, because if the first question was "I was born ... Are you ...
I feel you've wasted a guess.
That's an interesting first guess, Paul.
If you wouldn't mind, like, shutting the fuck up for the rest of the quiz.
No, I can't, because that last coffee you made, I think you put 4 spoonfuls in. We haven't done the Patreon show yet. That's going to be
I wasn't
interesting.
looking, to be perfectly honest. I have this horrible tendency to free pour coffee. I have been involved in professional cycling.
Okay.
Peugeot.
Could be.
Sport background.
Does this man think the wheel was invented in 1920?
I was thinking of a tyre manufacturer. Continental?
Could be.
Michelin, do they do? Or Michelin, do they do? We have had Michelin before.
Yeah, and I have had their tyres on a bike.
Dunlop.
Everyone's had Dunlop tyres on a bike. But...
And Dunlop shoes. We all had Dunlop shoes, didn't we?
Green
Yeah,
Flash.
Green
Green
Flash.
Flash.
Yeah.
But
I'd still rock a pair of Green Flash if I saw them.
You can still get them.
Yeah.
But I think Dunlop have been around a lot longer than since 1920.
Okay.
I played a part in Michael Valiant. Is that a guy? I think that's what it says. Valiant's career. I don't know who he is. He sounds brave.
Probably done something related to motorsport between 1920 and 2019.
Sounds like a cartoon character.
He sounds
Sounds
like a
like a
knight
baddie
of
from
he sounds
Airwolf.
like a knight of the realm. I have appeared in a motion picture. I'd like a guess, please.
Lots of tyres have appeared in motion pictures.
I'll also say this man said, "Do you think this one is too hard?" Oh, it was, no, sorry, no, he didn't. That was a different one that I'm not doing this week. He actually said, "Do you think this one is too easy?"
No.
My answer would be no.
I replied, "No, mate."
Appeared in a motion picture, so we could be looking at something like Grand Prix or Le Mans.
Or Herbie Goes Bananas. just putting it out there.
Aladdin.
The Lion King.
Circle of life. Life circles round.
Yep.
I got nothing.
When was Skoda formed?
When was Skoda in a film?
Oh, I'm sure there's been Skodas in films.
I believe the terminology was created, formed, will not be accepted.
They were in that really low budget remake, The Check Job.
I've got a DVD called The Check Job.
No.
Oh dear.
It's also followed
No.
up by Check Your Bad Self.
Check yourself before you wreck yourself. Third.
Next question.
I have been involved in a wide range of motorsport, most notably endurance racing and Formula One. Don't throw your guesses at me all at once.
Is that what he actually says? I was going to say that's just you adding that on.
I think Peugeot's still...
Yep.
I need a guess.
Peugeot?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll go Peugeot for this guess.
I am still active in motorsports, amongst others, the VW Fun Cup.
So, Volkswagen.
I also have a DVD called Fun Cup.
Probably not Peugeot.
No,
I'm guessing not.
Not the VW Fun Cup.
Maybe the fun is you get to drive something that isn't a VW.
I had fun driving my VWs till they fell apart.
Skoda's made by VW these days.
They are, but wasn't the Beetle designed like ridiculously early? Though I thought more 1930 than 1920.
I would have thought so, yeah.
Well, yeah, because Ferdinand Porsche designed the Volkswagen Beetle as a people's car.
Because that's what
Yes.
Volkswagen means.
Yes. The Volkswagen, if you will. So the Beetle might not be so stupid as Herbie Goes Bananas being the actual motion picture
Yeah.
which it took part in. But I don't think 1920 is quite correct because that's far too early for the Beetle to be a Beetle.
Did cars even have like roofs in 1920? Were they still all open topped?
I'm gonna help this out. Absolutely fucking not.
Next clue.
I feel that Lee was trying to give us a clue there, but
There was something subtle, but I don't know if we picked up on
Yeah.
it. What's the next question?
I have experienced 52 fatalities in my motorsport career. I'm
Peugeot.
Maldonado.
No, Peugeot they had a lot of Group B crashes in rallying, didn't they? Way back when?
Every Group B car crashed.
Yeah.
Not a car.
Oh, yeah, could we be looking at a circuit?
car.
Yeah, that's a possibility.
Where do they hold the VW Fun Cup?
Not,
Where don't they? Fun Cup can just go wherever it wants. Everyone loves it.
How old's the circuit door south? There's been a lot of fatalities at Le Mans.
Bugatti circuit.
That's what the MotoGP was on this weekend. But
That's pretty old, isn't it?
we got another clue.
Last clue. I played a big part in Jackie Stewart's crusade to improve safety.
Nordschleife.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I reckon.
Because the Nordschleife was would have been part of the movie Rush
And Grand Prix.
and Grand Prix. 52 fatalities possibly in motorsport only, because there have been plenty that haven't been motorsport related, and idiots who just think that they can drive as fast as they possibly can round corners that they can't.
It also spends an alarmingly large part of the year being closed so that they can remove penises from the track that have been drawn there before filming days.
Yeah, the Nordschleife sounds about right.
Was its first foray into motorsport a failure?
No idea.
Let's assume it was.
Yeah.
The Nürburgring or the Nordschleife, because Jackie Stewart as well had all the drivers strike for one of the German Grand Prix in the 70s, didn't he? All of the drivers refused to go out until Armco barriers were put up in certain parts of the circuit where there were people just stood.
Yeah, because you were either going to hit people or a tree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I reckon that's a good one.
Yeah.
Is that your final guess?
I think
Yes.
it is.
I'm Spa.
Spa.
Oh.
There was a Spaffer, but the problem with this Spaffer was it was an instant giveaway, because I'm famous for the fact that I can be dry on one side while wet on the other.
Which could still be the
Yeah.
Nordschleife.
No, but Spa is.
But,
It's
yeah.
Spa's
Yeah.
thing, innit? But that was a good one.
That was a good one. You definitely got us on that, Rune. How do you get a total shunt in?
You can send me a PM on Twitter at a total shunt. If you're not on Twitter and you want to do one of these, I now use Instagram a lot more. So I'm on Instagram at a total shunt, so you can PM me on that as well.
That's a lot of typing on your phone, because apparently you can't send PMs on a computer on Instagram.
Yeah, you can.
Can you?
Yeah.
Oh, I obviously don't use Instagram on my PC, and anywhere close to enough. If you want to get a hold of the rest of us, you can get the general account, which is at 3 Legs 4 Wheels on Twitter, and individually the rest of us are
At Flood21.
At Dan Dankleton.
and at Pablo100, and Sean is at Sean Cowper. If you want to drop us an email for any reason, which a few people have, you can get us 3legs4wheels@gmail.com. Messages on Facebook. If you go to facebook.com/3legs4wheels, you'll find the page there. Just get a plug in for the extra Patreon show as well. Subscribe from as little as $1 a month. You get an extra show every week where we talk absolute rot. I think we're going to be talking absolute rot tonight. About anything and everything not Formula One. And you can sign up by going to patreon.com/3legs4wheels. Last thing is just a quick update on Formula Lee. It is Monaco in the dry in a Red Bull, and you have got until the Monday after the Monaco Grand Prix to get your times into us. Send them by direct message, any of those methods, or for anyone that's on PlayStation, if you add me as a friend, Pabstar, then I'll be able to see your times on the leaderboard. I think
That works.
That about covers it for tonight, doesn't it?
I think so.
Yeah.
Once again, huge thanks to Craig Scarborough for joining in with us and putting up with us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And just being a general legend.
Yeah, always a great show when he's on. And we'll be back next week, and hopefully we'll have all fallen asleep during Monaco. I'll watch out for the live blog
It
at the
will be
weekend.
better than Spain.
Who are you trying to convince? Everybody else or you?
No, because at least Monaco still has that edge of danger where somebody can go into the wall at any moment. Spain was just dull.
Yeah, fair point. Yeah. Right, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Ciao.